Welcome to the Startup Lowdown, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the real stories behind building a successful business. I'm Case Dean, here to bring you an honest look at the ups, downs, and unexpected turns that come with growing something from the ground up. In this podcast, we focus on the human side of business, the tough decisions, the resilience, and the values that drive purpose-driven leaders. Join us as we dive into the personal journeys of inspiring business owners who are committed to making a real impact. Let's get into today's conversation. Startup Lowdown. My guest today is Jennie Hays, coming to us from Texas. How are you doing today, Jennie?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's Thanksgiving in my world, and it's family and fun and relaxation.
Happy Thanksgiving. So, in the shot that I had of you before we got to the introduction, I didn't actually see the guitar. Whose guitar is that?
Oh, mine.
Yeah, and you've been playing
Mine.
guitar for
Yeah.
how long?
I started when I was 16, and then I put it down and picked it up in my early 20s. And I actually led worship for about 5 years. And I will say it's got a lot of dust on it right now. I've just been so busy, but it is in my heart. I play so I can sing. And
Right,
that's the whole reason I picked it up.
for expression. So, talking about being so busy, we'll get into that because, yeah, you are very busy. So, let me just introduce exactly who you are.
Mhm.
Jennie Hays is a certified brain spotting practitioner, which we'll get into in a moment, who helps entrepreneurs overcome emotional barriers and limiting beliefs to unlock their true potential. With a unique mix of deep emotional work and practical strategies, Jennie empowers business owners to achieve clarity, confidence, and unstoppable momentum in building a life and business they love. How's that?
Sounds like a great job. I'm glad I have it.
I'm glad there's people like you around. Okay, there's a lot to get through. So first off, I'm gonna go through my recon, which was such an interesting thing. I've used this word in episodes and in my life, and the first time I hesitated actually using it was speaking to my yep, he was my last guest, who was
Mhm.
a 21-year army veteran. And it was just like all of a sudden using the word recon was like, stop playing. What do you know about recon? But he's not here now, so I'm going to use it. Recon, I had to do a bit of digging. So the first thing is from what I do, online business, marketing, whatever, searching, Googling. When people say things like, I've Googled myself, I don't Google myself, but I definitely Google the hell out of other people, right? Businesses, whatever it might be. And it was interesting to find that once I opened my incognito window, which basically means Google's supposedly not checking anything I've done before, I've stuck in Jennie Hays, and you're the only Jennie Hays that comes up. Like, you literally own page one
Oh,
and
yeah.
page two,
Oh, that's
which
cool.
is
That's cool.
pretty interesting, right? I would expect that Jennie Hays, Google would mess around and say there's a Jennifer Hays, whatever, which one do you mean? But no, it's just you with nice shots.
Go on.
Really nice shots. One of the things I found on that results page was that you were featured in the Her Way series, which
Mhm.
is a blog by Sasha Walton, I believe, on Medium, and you were featured in August of this year. Could you tell me how that came about?
She simply put out a call on Facebook, and I saw it and I thought, well, this is another opportunity to reach out to entrepreneurs who are stuck like I was and educate them, let them know that there's hope. And so I jumped in with both feet. I had no idea what I was doing, but it doesn't stop me anymore. And she was wonderful. She was an amazing host. Oh my goodness, I loved my conversation with her. It's still on up on YouTube, and uh,
Perfect.
she was really good. She was really talented.
I'm gonna make a note. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, I got your email.
Oh,
Definitely, most definitely, I'm going to link. It was always going to be done. I'm definitely going to link through to your website afterwards, and
okay.
we'll be reminded about this towards the end. But I'm going to make a note to include or get you to send me that YouTube. I could probably find it. If you could send me the link, I'll
Yeah.
put that in the notes as well.
Let me
Yeah,
make a note real quick so that I do it. And I can also
cool.
connect the two of you.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice.
Yeah, she's really awesome. So
Ah, super cool.
send
Thank you
your
so
way
much.
video case and
So
connect. Okay.
there was a lot. I mean, I had a look at your LinkedIn. There's a lot going on, and I'll go into that a bit more. Um, Basically, it seems like you've transitioned from employee to business owner around April 2010, where you co-founded Bucking Horse Remodeling and Repair.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems to be your shift from traditional employment into entrepreneurship. And then afterwards, that let you loose and you've been doing so much stuff. Normally when I check somebody's timeline, it kind of says something like, did this, stopped it, did that, stopped it. But when I was going through, it's like, started this, still going, started this, still going, started this, still going. It's really amazing to see. But before we get into all of those different things, starting from Buck and Horse Remodeling and Repair, the most amazing thing for me, or standout thing, was that as I'm going down,
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest part of your career employment was that you're a paramedic.
Yes. With one of the premier,
Talk to me about that job,
yeah.
how you got into that job, and then we can get into what happened for you to say, I'm now moving into doing my own business stuff.
So, paramedic actually started because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I had in high school decided I was going to be an accountant, turned down an opportunity to be military intelligence. I would have been third generation, which
Wow.
I now wonder sometimes if that was wise. And I started getting into customer service, and it was just, I was getting bored. It was getting old. And I was reading Robin Cook books at the time. And I thought, oh, I think I want to go into
Who's
medicine.
Robin Cook?
Robin Cook is an author that writes medical mysteries.
Mm.
Him and Patricia Cornwell were both at that time that I was reading. And so it was like, this seems interesting, but I know there's a lot of politics in medicine, and I am not a politics kind of person. So I thought, well, I'm going to dip my toe in. And so I started out as a CNA, a certified nurse assistant. Um, there was actually a woman who passed away while I was on shift. I couldn't do a thing at that point. I was so brand new. All I could do was stand at the door and make sure nobody came in. But the adrenaline rush that came with everything, it was like, ooh, this is interesting. So I thought, well, I'm going to go get my EMT basic. And I had so much fun that I got my intermediate. And then I got my paramedic. And then I ended up working for Austin Travis County EMS back when they were the premier system, with Ed Rock at the head. And I mean, we practiced medicine and it was beautiful. I loved it. Unfortunately, I got injured right at the time that they were doing a massive change to the system. And ironically, politics is what ended up me moving out of that. Um, so I moved away from Austin EMS, ended up working for a smaller system, had a head injury that put me out of commission for about.
How did you get this injury? If you What
I would
happened?
love to say I was running into a burning building and something fell on my head. No, I was at the grocery store with my husband, and we had one of those old 1980s trucks with the steel, frame. And I turned sideways and I stood up with both legs into the doorway, and I
No.
had a tiny bleed. And so I ended up with post concussion syndrome for about 2 years. I went from being able to do complex mathematical equations in my head to I could barely add without
Wow.
writing things down. I had to be flat for the first 2 months because anytime I got up, I was sick. Had to do a lot of rehab, a lot of things to get me back.
For sure.
And so that was the time when I actually ended up working with my husband out in the field for bucking horse remodeling.
Okay.
I figured out that this whole thing of actually working exclusively in a business that you own is a pretty good thing. Now, I did go back to work for a while, for about 4 years, working for someone else. And there was no doubt it was like, this is just not working. It's just, there's just too much, there's too many rules when you work for a big corporation, you know?
For sure.
Um, I can, I
And
can,
and and I think considering what I'm getting to understand about your character, this isn't just about being braggadocious or anything, but you've got a lot to give, and the corporate entity is going to basically contain you to the point of kind of rubbing you out.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been an ideas person. I always have this great idea, you know. I used to joke about, I was like, give the hardest job to the laziest person, and they're going to find the fastest and quickest way to do it. And corporations are not worried about fast. They're not worried about client care. And they're not worried about quality. And those three things were super important to me. And so it was
Right.
constantly fighting uphill to provide the kind of care that I wanted to provide.
So when you're working with your husband, and it
Mhm.
seems you're taking care of bids, advertising, customer service, you're doing hiring. Basically, it's kind of admin that you're doing.
At first, I was doing the
Yeah.
bids. Yeah, I was helping find the subcontractors. I was, doing the customer care. Occasionally on the weekends, I would go out with him and help actually build the houses. We At that time we were doing remodels and additions and things like that. And so, yeah, I spent 2 years out in the field with him. But I will say, the morning that he rolled over and said, "I think it's time for you to go back to work," I had my
Really.
applications in that day.
Right.
So
And why did he say it's time for you to go back to work?
Um, my brain was working better. Things were kind of flowing with the business where he really didn't need me there. Um, and he had all the help he needed. And so basically I was just kind of walking around getting in the way, I think.
Right. Okay, but between 2017, where Bucking Horse Remodeling and Repair stops, and
Hmm.
what seems to be your first business, Jennie's Health Solutions, in
Hmm.
2019, we've got a 2 year gap.
Yeah,
So,
I was working as a paramedic in not in 911 anymore. I worked for a podiatrist for a couple of years while I was bringing my brain back into being able to do the things I needed to be able to do. And then the other 2 years were in radiology, doing sedation for procedures and helping with breast biopsies and things along those lines. So I was back in the medical establishment doing that. My husband actually took a hiatus and worked for a corporation, which I felt was great because now he knows what it's like
what was he
to work
doing?
under somebody else.
What was he
He
doing?
was building out, those container homes and
Oh,
shops and
right.
those big shipping containers. Yeah, he was working for a company
That's
that did
pretty
that.
cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah, he got to build some racing ones and some for the military and things like that too.
Um,
Yeah.
so you've returned to the medical field, but what is it that's happening that then leads you to create Jennie's Health Solutions?
We were trying to get pregnant, and I found out I was infertile, and the test came back saying that I had PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is it's basically your hormones are screwed up, and you don't ovulate, you don't create that egg like you're supposed to, right? And when I was doing research, because that's what I do, just like you do a deep dive and do recon. If I hear something, it's like I'm in it. I was like, this is directly related to insulin resistance and pre-diabetes. And at the time, that was when I was working at the podiatrist office. I was looking as the surgery pre and post care person for people that we were cutting their feet off because they were diabetic.
Got
So
it. Okay.
between the strong desire to get pregnant and the strong desire to be able to continue to walk and not become diabetic, um, I started doing my own research because what I was getting from the doctors is the same thing I was telling people for 20 years, and I knew it didn't work.
Right.
I knew it didn't work because not everybody can be messing up that badly that they just keep getting worse and worse and worse.
Right.
So, what I found was that it's really actually fairly simple, not necessarily easy, but simple to reverse insulin resistance and pre-diabetes. It's a matter of changing your diet. And so I started doing it. And as I was doing it, people around me started noticing the changes and they started coming along with me. And so for the next couple of years, even as I transitioned over to radiology, I was doing more research. I was like, oh, this person's coming in for MS. Wow, the same changes for insulin resistance can help with MS. Oh, they can help prevent cancer. oh, they can help with migraines. And so as people would come in, it was like connections. And I had begun sharing things with people, not telling them what to do because I'm not a doctor, but I had been told not to do that anymore. And it was like, I am bursting inside. I
Right,
have to help people. I
right.
can't sit here and watch them get the standard treatment, knowing that this is just leading them down a trail of more drugs and death eventually. And so that's when I started Jennie's Health Solutions. And I jumped in with both feet, and it was like, here we go. And it
T-
started off strong, but
Okay, so when you got when you decided, can you talk to me about the period of time? If you can get the exact hour, even better. But talk to me about that moment when you're like, that's it, I'm doing my own thing.
so there was a young woman who was a type 1 diabetic that I was working with. Type 1 diabetes and type 2 are completely different. Type 2 comes from, a long history of poor diet, whereas type 1, something has attacked the pancreas and is killing the cells that make insulin. Okay. She and I talked a lot about how to reverse type 2. We talked about the fact that some of those things could be helpful for her. No, no force, no nothing. She ended up having went into what's called ketoacidosis. Well, because the keto diet and ketoacidosis sound alike, every the management in the office assumed that what I was talking to her about is what caused her problem. It is not what caused
Oh,
her problem medically at all. So that's when they came in and said, you can't talk to anybody anymore about anything other than exactly what happens here in the office. And it was like I had another client come in and I was like, I just was dying inside because it was like all they need to do, and all I would used to do was just give them, I was like, hey, check this YouTube video out, check this study out. That was it. I really didn't tell them anything about details because that wasn't my place, but I wasn't even allowed to do that anymore. And it was like, and it had nothing to do with her. And so I was really frustrated that rather than asking me for the science behind what had happened to her versus they just did a blanket statement that it was my fault.
and did you at any point feel like, because there's two ways I can look at this. You are somebody who holds certain information that can make things better,
Hmm.
but somebody of a certain hierarchy above you, whatever, your plus one, sees you doing it, doesn't respect that you know anything, and it's kind of like, shut up. That's one. Then
Right.
there's the other one, which is, yeah, yeah, we know about that, but it's going against the grain of what we're doing out here.
Well, really, unfortunately, it was the second one is what the situation was. I I was not I didn't have MD, and so therefore my opinion didn't matter whether what I had value or not. It wasn't acceptable, and that was when I started kind of pushing back. It was like, maybe there's more problems in this system than I thought because it's really not about healing people. It's about egos and money and keeping them in the system.
Yes, yes, yes. My mum's
Yeah.
worked in well, she doesn't work anymore. She's retired, but she worked a lot as a nurse and midwife, and it was when she was working as a social worker for children and families, displaced families, families going through problems, any kind of dysfunctionality in the family, this kind of thing. I remember having a conversation to her. I was pretty young, and she was explaining to me that she realized, and she was somebody who had studied social politics, so taught me a lot about what is supposed to be on the front as far as what is being said to happen and what's
Mhm.
really happening underneath.
Yeah.
And so she taught me very young in certain government institutions, and I've lived in two countries and been close to this, the UK and in France, where my wife is French, so I was in France for 14 years. And there are certain institutions you go to speak to, and everything seems to move slow. Even the conversation, once you've got to the front,
Mhm.
seems to move slow. And my mum taught me at an early age that's by design. It's to slow you down in some situations to dissuade you
Right.
from actually going forwards. Then I watched her go through her career, and she was really, considering what she taught me, she was taken aback by the fact that she was going to places to assess people for the need they. So she go into a home and, oh, this person disabled, so they need this, they need that. This will help with their quality of life. Take all this report back to the office and have the report kind of shelved. Thank you for your work. Here's the next one. And my mum was like, what? And I think it was at that point she realized as a civil servant, basically, that what she thought she was helping doing, she was actually working a system that was kind of doing the opposite, and she was kind of like a little soldier of that. As
Hmm.
much as her heart and her skills were trying to do one thing, she was working with in a system that was basically doing the other. And for her coming into it, not being green, not being ignorant, but I think it was a lesson for her to realize that there are a lot of people who have the skill, the fortitude, the intention to help. But, and I've seen this from working with people where it's like, don't do that, become a consultant, where you actually get more respect working outside of the
Yeah.
business than you do within it.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. If I'd been coming in as a consult for any of the physicians there, they would have listened to me even without an MD behind my name. But because I was there as an employee, I wasn't, it wasn't, didn't matter. And what mattered less was that individual sitting in that chair waiting for that procedure. And that broke my heart. You
What
know,
would you
I cried.
say? What would you say you can? What is it that's this hasn't just happened. So this has been a thread throughout your life. What would you be able to highlight throughout your life that just makes this make sense as far as the way that you are? That in actual fact, no, I'm not. Because you could have shut your mouth. There's people
Mhm.
respectfully who could have just shut their mouth. I've got a mortgage to pay, whatever it is, and just did the job. But you, and I love the rebellious streak because I have it as well. Once I realize there is an injustice, it's very, very difficult for me to toe the line at this point. Like
Yeah.
there's too much at stake. I feel like the soul of the earth is at stake, and I don't want to be a part of it. But what were you like growing up that showed signs of this?
I don't know that I showed very many signs of it growing up. I grew up in a military household. And it was very much you will be who you're expected to be in the correct situation. So I always talk about I wore different masks. I had a mask for
Right,
church, I had a mask for home, one
right.
for school, one for when we were on the base. And it wasn't until I was in my mid to late teens that it was like, I'm so tired of pretending to be somebody and I don't even know who I am. And
Right.
so that was really when I started pushing back. I didn't do it very wisely at first, 16 years old and ran off and got married.
Oh
To
wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't marry him at 16. I met him at 16. We got married like 2 months after I turned 18, but my parents didn't like him. I mean, he was, I don't want to speak ill of the dead because he's passed away a few years ago now, but
Sorry to hear that.
let's just say that he had a lot of traits that were not conducive to marriage, like dating.
Right.
Were so was not a good choice. But it's that I think is what set me up more because I realized that nobody else was going to take care of me. I was going to have to learn to take care of myself. And if I was going to do that, I had to be aware of what was going on. Living in a marriage that I didn't know that he was cheating on me when we were dating until, 3 or 4 years into the marriage set me up for failure. And it was like, I'm not doing that again. And I think that's really where the shift happened.
And so this kind of then goes into, because I've always liked the idea from what I was taught in my career very early on of people kind of scratching their own itch and then
Mhm.
realizing, hey, this can help others.
Oh,
So there's
yeah.
the medical part of it, that you've gone through, but then there's something else that I can see coming in here, which is also as a woman, as an individual, just having the God given right to do what you want to do, especially in the face of somebody kind of dismissing all that you could do
Yeah.
and kind of trying to say, like you've just said, just be that. And as much as you've broken out of this, is it true that within your work that you're helping others? That part of it is helping others with this?
Yeah. That's a lot of what brain spotting is. Um, because as entrepreneurs, as people, just in general, we get stuck, and we get stuck by things like those masks. I wish I'd had the tool brain spotting back when I was younger. It wasn't even invented yet, I don't think. Because instead of it taking me years to find this person that has that grit and just, I'm going to do it, um, it would have been days. Now, and where would I be now? Would I be using that guitar on stage? Would I be an MD causing more problems in the system, or breaking against the system still? Those were my early dreams. Um, but I really also can't complain about that because I love where I'm at now too.
For sure.
And I love being able to bring other people up when they're stuck so that they can claim what's theirs.
How did you come across brain spotting? What was your first? You can't have, you can't have been like, yeah, that's it. You must have been like brain spotting, like
What
coming from a
was that?
medical background as well. Like, is there a machine involved, or is this just like hokey pokey? What is going on here? And
I had
then,
somebody say that
how did you get to a point of saying, oh wow,
that this is the thing. Yeah, I had somebody tell me that it sounded like someone was having a stroke, and that's probably what I would have thought at first. So we have to go back to the insulin resistance business that I'd started to really get a good picture of what was going on. So I started the insulin resistance business in April of 2019. And like a good soldier, like a good coach, I did one of a course. It was a $10,000 course, included a trip to Florida for a rally, yay, yay rally. And on the plane, when we were coming back, we got a message that my mother in law had had a stroke. 3 days later, my dad dies. So while I was ready to start promoting, I shut down and just crumbled. About 6 months later, when everything kind of comes back around, and I'm like, okay, I found my peace again. I'm done enough with the grieving that I can step into who I am. We were in the middle of COVID. I had been learning how to speak on stages, specifically wanting to speak on stages in churches to help women with insulin resistance. That was not happening during COVID here in the US. I
yeah,
don't know how it was where you were. Um, so I was like, well, I need to learn something else. So I went and I took another course. Got to the marketing part, didn't do it. Took another course. Guess what I did? Got to the marketing part, didn't do that. I did this over a period of about 5 years. Well, about three
wow.
years in, yeah, yeah. And I was really starting to think there's something really wrong with me. There really is, because I must not be meant to be an entrepreneur, even though I feel it in my bones that this is what I'm supposed to do. So during about year three, my husband came to me and he says, I love you. You have to get a job. And so I was kicking and screaming and complaining and crying, and I fell into this position with a company that helps therapists go from starting their business to scaling, etc. And they had a business coach that they brought in that did brain spotting, and they
Okay,
loved it so much they're like, we're going to train everybody. And so I went through the training because I was employed and they gave it to me.
nice.
The training was intensive. It was very moving. It blew
How
my
long?
mind.
How long was it? What was the
It's only a
training?
3 day course. There's
Okay.
multiple levels, and I will pursue those other levels. But I'm finding that I'm getting so many results with just the phase one.
So hold on for a minute. So you're working for a company. They decide everybody's got to do this training. You've done the
Mhm.
training. Now again, an employee, do the
Yeah.
training, done it, back to my job. But something happened. What was it?
Well, actually, I'm still working with them because I love the
Okay.
way they run their business. They are allowing me to be almost like an independent contractor under them, but being paid W-2.
Beautiful. Everybody can win. Seriously.
Right.
It's not that
And
difficult.
and they believe in me building my business and want me to do so. And
Oh,
they're willing to
nice.
help me. So, yeah, could not have fallen into a better place. So, brain spotting. How did I decide, okay, I'm not doing insulin resistance anymore? I did some of my own. And I did a session and I realized that, I'm not your typical 9 to 5, Monday, through Friday employee. And the kind of business that I was trying to run didn't fit who I am. Can I still help people with insulin resistance? Yes. Do I like that long term, you know, keep pulling you back to try and do the thing? No, I'm a paramedic. I want to run in there, save you, and then let you do the thing. Now, brain spotting is addictive. You'll be back. But that's what I want is I want to make a quick difference and an impactful difference. Also, I have some ADHD. And so if you ask me to do the same thing every day for weeks on end, it's not happening. And so I had to change the way that I approach the business too. I'm not going to be on Instagram. I can't post 3 or 4 times a day. Drive me nuts. Right. So brain spotting really helped me to identify, okay, there's some problems here. And it was like, what do you love to do more than anything else? What are you seeing great results in? Brain spotting. I'm watching people go from not being able to talk to people to talking to people to losing their anxiety. I have a friend that had some serious anxiety with medical issues, and 2 years later, she's like, "I feel like it should be there, but it's just not doesn't come up." And she's had 2 cancer, um, you know, prognoses that she thought she was going to have cancer, it ended up didn't. And then her mother ended up with glioblastoma and still has it. And so she should be dealing with anxiety, and she's not. And so seeing the changes in people long term, it was like, I can't keep this from the world.
Tell me something. Maybe just one moment. I just want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me something. Could you give me a very quick understanding of what brain spotting is? Because
Yes.
trust me, I've been through so much in my life that I'm like, I get it. But again, for the purposes of the tape, what can you tell me about exactly what brain spotting is? Because it doesn't sound like just another thing that, like picking a football team, somebody does that, somebody does this. This sounds quite revolutionary, I think.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it is. So, um, little background information that you need to know first. We're not born with the ability to self regulate, meaning when you are a baby, you don't know how to regulate your emotions. We see
Right.
this in toddlers as they're learning to walk. When they fall down, the first thing they do is look around to see who's looking and what their reaction is. Then they borrow our regulation. So if we're upset, they cry. And if we laugh, they laugh, right?
Right.
Now, when a new thing happens to us, it comes in through our body and it comes up into the limbic system, which is where our fight, flight, flee, fawn reaction is. The brain evaluates it and says, is this something that is too much to process right now? Or if I put it in long term memory, is it going to kill me eventually? And if it's either one of those things, it will keep it in that limbic system and it makes like a little tiny time capsule. If it's fine, it'll just put it in long term memory, right? So, what brain spotting does is we go back in and we find that memory using your brain spot. Your eye tissue and your brain tissue is very similar in nature, and we store memories 3D. And you can be assured of this if you think, okay, when was the last time I was stuck in traffic? And your eyes will usually go to try to find that memory, right? So we find where the memory's stored, we connect it to the emotions in the body, and we let that memory play out. Now, we don't have to relive the memory. We just need to relive the emotions so that we can move that memory into long-term storage, because now you can feel the emotions in safety because I'm providing safety for you.
So
And
tell me something. The thing about long-term memory, short-term memory, you're talking about moving into long-term memory. What are the advantages, disadvantages of this happening?
the advantage is that whatever emotion you had tied to it will not be active anymore. It becomes a memory. I believe, did you say that you were married? I don't remember whether you
Yes,
said yes.
18
So when
years,
you
yeah.
think about your wedding, you have good feelings, but there's not the overwhelming emotion that you had on the day because
Right,
that is in long term memory. So you're
right.
able to relive that without pain or pleasure or extreme. I'm going with a happy one.
Yeah, no, that's
Same thing
fine.
happens with the painful ones. If you had something happen to you that was negative, if we can get it in long term storage, it's not going to impede you. Because here's what happens with those time capsules, they leak. So maybe it's something that you don't even remember. Maybe you were a kid and mom and dad were fighting about there's never enough money and that you can't earn enough money to pay the bills. So you have brought that with you, that belief, that time capsule. And now, whenever money comes up, you don't know where it came from, but it leaks. And you can't do the thing that brings the money in. Maybe like me, when I was growing up, my dad, very innocently, he didn't even remember it when we talked about it. I was singing in the back seat of the car, and he said, "We don't need a concert." And I took that to mean he didn't want to hear me. And so
Mm-hmm,
it shut my voice down.
mm-hmm.
And so that leaked through many, many years. I was afraid to really speak out, to sing in front of people, all these things. But with brain spotting, it goes in there, cleans it out in about 50 minutes, and it's just not an issue anymore.
Did you say within 50 minutes?
5-0. Most people get relief in one session. Sometimes it'll go 2 or 3 sessions, but usually not. It's freaking insane. I mean, there's really no other. I had a marketer tell me, "Don't tell people that because the BS meter goes too high." And I was like, "But it's the truth."
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that advice. That's a bit weird.
Well, obviously, I didn't listen to it, right?
Okay, so you've been including this, you've actually been part of multiple ventures.
Hmm.
That's just what I see from. But okay, I've kind of gone answer this, but I still want to get your answer. How did you decide when to start something new? And what? Well, you've kind of answered it, but I still want to. I still want it for the tape. And what drives you to keep exploring more? Because at
New.
any point you could be quite masterful at anything you choose to be. You're tenacious in that way. So I know you've mentioned ADHD. There's obviously singing is creativity, and with a creative person, there's a need to continuously create or just basically be sick in some way, shape, or form. But in your own words, what is it that has kept you still doing new stuff?
New stuff. I have an innate need to learn. And
Okay,
unfortunately, with the ADHD, once I learn something and learn it all the way through, I only have a limited lifetime on how long I'm interested in it. So I've got to stay engaged. One of the reasons I think the brain spotting is going to last is because every single session is different. I never know what's going to happen when the Zoom meeting. I do everything virtual.
right.
And while there's a pattern, we go from dark. I've had some people say it feels like I'm just complaining to this realization to the light. Sometimes the pictures are beautiful. I had somebody who had this, dark rock that turned into a chrysalis that turned into a butterfly. I had somebody who ended up with a unicorn horn. I had somebody who didn't have any images at all, just followed the feeling, but felt better afterwards. You never know what's going to come up because we're all built so differently that all these different things mean different things to you. And I just get to partake. And so I'm still
Nice.
learning about you, about the way you see the world every time I sit down to do a brain spotting. It is my favorite thing to do right now. Absolutely.
Well, how did you get your first client doing this?
Networking.
When you say
Networking.
networking, what? Because this is one of these words that I think
Mhm.
I don't say lose meaning, but yeah.
Yeah.
What was networking for you?
Networking for me is going through, at first I started off in Facebook, which is always interesting. But jumped on Facebook and just started looking for people that was like, hey, you want to have a coffee? And just started educating people
Are
about
these
brain.
strangers or
These are
people in your
strangers.
entourage?
These are
Really?
strangers. Yeah. And the funny thing is that 3 years ago, 2 years ago, wouldn't have done it. Not
This is what I'm about
in,
to say. This is what I'm trying to
yeah,
reconcile at the moment. That the person I've learnt about and this kind of ballsy person is just going out there and meeting strangers on the internet. Like, hey,
yeah, let's just have a coffee. And I do tell people, and this is one of the tips that I give people all the time, whenever you start to do networking, always ask them about them first, because
for
that's
sure,
always our favorite subject.
for sure.
And then I just tell them about me, and people go, ooh, or, oh, I think my daughter might need that. Do you work with X, Y, or Z? Or, oh, I'm going to give that for a gift, for Mother's Day. Or
Was it a technique that was taught to you, or was there a kind of survival instinct that kicked in that then put you into doing this in this way?
so when I was, doing all the work with the therapists with that company, one of my jobs as an accountability coach was to help them figure out these things. And so I started thinking, okay, if someone contacts me, what I don't want is the, hi, how are you? You know, because immediately I go, oh, spam. I'm not talking to this person, right? So it was like, how do I want to be contacted? And I realized that really what we all want is we want people to ask about us. And the only way that I can give back to that person, if all we do is a coffee and we don't do a sale, right, is to share their information with other people. And how beautiful is that? Because that's going to help other people grow their businesses. So that became my mantra. It was like, my whole goal is to help other people build their businesses. Um, I've actually got a couple businesses working with that I do what's called where they've got a large business where they've got clients that are getting stuck. When they purchase whatever program with them, they also get a session with me. And then they
So
just
here's the thing. So there's the insulin business, and there was the diabetes, and there was the medical stuff. Then there's brain spotting. Brain spotting gets linked to people's financial freedom and their businesses in a way.
Mhm.
So you could you have used brain spotting in the medical way?
Sure. And yeah, and I've got a couple people that I have done that with, where they're stuck with what they're eating because they keep doing the same thing over and over again. That emotional eating, that unknown why I'm doing it. Sometimes it's because of the foods you're eating. So there's certain foods that we know will trigger you to eat more. But sometimes it's, again, we go back to those early childhood memories that maybe we don't even remember, where there wasn't enough food in the fridge. So yes, I could have. But to be honest, I'd been working with people growing their business for 3 years and found that, or at that point, 1 year, and I knew it inside and out. And so it was like, this is where I'm going to start, because there's a marketing saying that if you market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody.
For sure.
So I just was like, I need to pick somebody. So I did. I was like, I'm going to pick people that were stuck where I was, and spending a whole friggin' lot of money to get somewhere, and really they don't need to. They don't need to spend anywhere near that.
There's a point you get to where you kind of know I don't need to learn anything else. Like I've got it. I actually need to
Hmm.
bring it to action. But you've hit the nail on the head from the beginning of our conversation. I've had it myself of that feeling where you actually can see yourself hesitating.
Hmm.
You might even feel like I want to move forward, but like you said, you're stuck.
Just can't. You're just stuck, and you don't know why. You think it's something. First you go through this evolution of, well, I need another course. Well, I need to learn this. I need to learn that. And then you get to the point where it's like, do I really? I know how to do. Don't want to do it. I keep.
How about this? Just
Yeah.
to echo everything you've said from a personal point of view. How about this one? I've in my career bought a course and then realized I already had it.
I love it. Love it.
Like
Haven't done
going
that
through the
one yet.
content and
But
thinking, I've seen this somewhere before. Oh my God, I already bought this a year ago and did exactly what I'm doing. I looked at it and then went on to something else, right?
yeah,
Which, in a way, from what you know from your expertise, from my knowledge, the buying of the course is part of the keeping you stuck.
right. Because you're thinking that that's the lifeline. That's what's going to get you through to that next thing. For me, it was buying that next course was going to be the right way to align with who I was to market. Now, I'm not saying brain spotting can take you from an introvert to all of a sudden speaking on stages. It doesn't work that way. And that's part of the reason that my consult's free. We actually discuss what's keeping you stuck. You do need to be aiming for the right areas, but sometimes you don't know what the right area is because you're stuck. And so the brain spotting will show it to you. I had one dear friend of mine now that we did brain spotting, and in the first few minutes she was stuck. She was like, I don't know how to market. I can't do anything. I just can't do it. And in the first few minutes she was like, it's in my book. I don't have it written yet, but it's in my book. And so we went through the whole thing. 2 weeks later, when we do our follow-up, she was like, I don't want to talk about brain spotting yet. I want to tell you all the stuff I'm doing. So she lists off how she's doing it. She goes, I'm on chapter 7 of my book. And it just came to me as I'm writing the book, I need to do this and I need this. And she goes, I don't know if that has anything to do with the brain spotting. And so I went back and I read her the first few lines of the transcript, and she was like, oh, I didn't realize that. So a lot of times the answer to get unstuck is in you,
For
but you
sure.
need a tool to dig it out, and it's not another course.
Who are the most ideal clients, customers, people for you to
Mhm.
work with?
So the easiest ones are the ones that know that they're stuck.
Right, of
um,
course.
Specifically, people that can feel their bodies. Now, if you can't feel your body, it doesn't mean brain spotting won't work for you. We'll just have to do some extra work in front of it so that you can start to feel in your body. But there's such a
What does feeling
magic.
your body mean?
So when you think about that last fight with your spouse,
Right?
do you feel it anywhere in your body? Does you feel it in your gut? Do you feel it in your chest or your
Probably in my
shoulders?
chest.
Okay,
Probably in my chest.
you'd be fine for
And
brain spotting.
interestingly, over the years, um, here's something that I researched.
Yeah,
Why am I so you'd have arguments. 18 years is a long time, right? Love my
right,
wife, absolutely amazing. And can apologize for some of the crap when I was younger and more immature, right? It's
right.
evolution. But one thing about conflict that I realized was getting angry and having read something which is keeping anger in is a bit like a fart, you're going to explode. So there was that. But then later on in life, what I noticed was whether or not there was any kind of expletives or I just felt the feeling of being
Mhm.
angry or upset, absolute tiredness, complete fatigue.
Yeah,
And once I realized that, I actually kind of got my own way of dealing with it, which is, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm going to sleep. And when I wake up, I'm feeling better. So I would
Better.
say that I also have a feel in my like my eyes or in my head as much as I do in my
Mhm.
chest. Does any of
Yeah.
what I've just said make sense to you? Because if I said to
Yeah.
anybody else, they'd be like, whatever.
No, that makes perfect sense because you were already unpacking and having the argument inside your body before it ever even came out of your mouth. Because you've had those arguments, because you know her so well, because all of these things, because she's so important to you. And so, yes, you would be an ideal client for brain spotting because you can feel in your body.
Right,
Now, I would encourage you before you go to sleep, though, when you're feeling that in your chest or behind your eyes, just to sit with that feeling for a little bit and then allow yourself to go to sleep, because what you're doing is you're finalizing that memory and allowing it to go into storage like we talked
right,
about,
right.
right?
Otherwise, it's kind of sitting under the surface, right? Waiting
Right.
for anything to happen to pop up,
Mhm.
like almost on standby.
Yeah, and that I actually use that as an example of blocks, when people are like, "Well, how do they leak?" If if you've ever your spouse has said something to you and it's like, who is that person talking back to them? Because I wouldn't say that, and it's coming out of your mouth. Those are leaks. That's one example.
Right. Interesting.
Uh, yeah, so perfect example.
Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so your role as a paramedic taught you to read between the words.
Hmm.
Can you share a moment when this skill profoundly impacted your work with a client?
Oh, every day,
Yeah.
every day. Um, so as a paramedic, you have to. People are going to tell you things, but going to tell you the whole story. Sometimes it's because they're protecting themselves, sometimes it's because of safety, sometimes they don't know the whole story. And so learning to find what's missing when people talk, and then pulling those pieces out and giving them back to them.
Right.
Um, yeah, a lot of times people, and I couldn't give you a specific example because it happens so much.
Right.
Um, it's like, again, go back to those long-term relationships, you with your wife. Are there times that she says something that you know what the words are that she's not saying?
Right.
Um, I'm I'm blessed, cursed, all the
Yeah.
above,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
ability to, after we've talked for a while, kind of pull some of those things out of people, and they're like, "Oh, sometimes I think you know me better than I know myself." And it's like, "No, it's what you're not saying."
Because we get used to telling ourselves things, and I can't remember what film it is. I'm a kind of film buff, but I remember I can't remember what film it is, but the line comes to my mind, which is similar to "You're trying not to tell me, but you're telling me everything." Right? Just from
Oh,
the way you're responding, the things
mhm,
you're saying, you're trying your best not to tell me. And in some cases, from your clients, it's not their fault, it's just force of habit. But
mhm,
you're endowed, you've got this way of actually being able to
to connect with that.
feel that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I used
Yeah,
to
that's
tell
one of the
people when I
reasons
was
I
growing
love
up, sorry, you're
so
saying?
yeah, that's one of the reasons I love Zoom, is because you can see the body language. You can see, I don't know if you ever saw the show Lie to Me, where he talks about
Yes,
micro.
I was just thinking about this just the other day. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say I'm anywhere near
Because
quality.
when you talked about the eyes, that's what came to mind. Because he was
Mhm.
talking about it's going up to the memory or something, and there's a way you look for the truth, and another way you look when you're trying
Or
to,
being creative.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And
Oh
that is
wow, I just thought about
most,
this the other day. It's Thingy Roth, an amazing actor. Yeah,
yeah.
but he
Yeah,
played
I
an
can't remember
American.
his
Yeah,
name, but yes. Yeah. And be careful about leaning too heavily on the eyes looking to a certain direction, our memory versus creating a lie. Studies are showing that that is what is
no,
more
no.
important are the things like self-correcting. If you tell a story and you have corrections in there, people go, "Oh, you must be lying." No, that's actually a sign of truth. So just kind of be careful.
how much of what you studied then to be certified, you're saying you're going to do next levels, but a big part of this seems to be to do with on one side you've got the physiology and how the body works, but on the
Mhm.
other side you've got the psychology, but then if also somewhere spirituality in there as well.
Yeah, and I do. I work with people of all faiths, but while I'm doing brain spotting, I'm praying for you. So
Right.
yes, there is some spiritual. I have people that will have, God or Jesus come into their whatever their journey is. So yes, I embrace the spirituality of it because it is truly a piece of who you are. The next levels are things like group brain spotting, being able to brain spot a large number of people. Um, there are some things with
What do you mean? Wait. What do you mean
so
group brain spot
group,
a
so like a
group of
group of
people?
people. So I have not done the training yet, and I have not tried it yet, but it is possible to do a little bit lesser intense brain spotting with a
Ah, so
group,
like one to many.
one to many.
Not like I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek. We're not talking about a collective mind.
Yeah,
We're talking about helping many people, taking them through a process at the
right,
same time.
right.
Cool.
We're
Group
not the
coaching.
board.
Okay.
We're not the board.
I'm being so silly. It must be close to Friday. Okay, yeah. And what set of skills do you need to be doing that differently? Is that because you're gonna have to be aware of different people? Does everybody get a prescription and whatever happens happens?
I, because I haven't taken the training yet, I don't know. What
Right.
I do know is that one of the things I absolutely love is the intimacy when you're doing brain. I always tell people go ahead and grab Kleenex because you might need it. So I haven't wrapped around being able to be intimate with a large number of people at the same time.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
But there's also other techniques. There's things like one eye brain spotting, and there's things. So people, because we're all built so differently, people respond differently to different
For
things.
sure.
I will say the
Do you
only time.
think do you think a part of your way of sorry, but do you think a part of your way of doing it, do you think a part of your way of personally doing it, because you've learned something and you've got your own specific way, you have to, but do you think
Mhm.
your way of doing it doesn't lend well to doing it with groups?
I would suspect that because I don't just do pure brain spotting. I tend to bring in other techniques as people need. And so I don't know how I would do that with a whole bunch of people, but I also haven't learned it yet. So who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I look at it from a business point of view, what we get told back to everything you learn about marketing was just like weighing you down. Another thing we talk about when it comes to growing your business, freedom and is you want to stop trading time for money.
Hmm.
And you one to one is killing you. There's only so many clients you can work with. The best thing for you to do is go group. You've got all of these
Scalable.
people and they all but but even
Hmm.
within the work I do, marketing strategy, it is very clear that for me to do my best work and for me to help people, it kind of requires the one-to-one deep dive connection, really feeling
Hmm.
the instinct, blah 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 blah, which isn't done with a group because it's basically like giving a sermon and I have no idea how it's being received because the feedback, which is part of my
Yeah.
powers, isn't it's not happening. It's it's
Hmm.
actually it's not about being scalable. It's actually insanity to a certain extent.
Right. And I'm sure that with my other skills that I have, that there will be scalable skills. Added
Right, right,
accountability coaching. I can do business coaching. There's other
right.
pieces after you come for brain spotting that if you need support, I can do these things for you while we're waiting for another. I always say there's don't this demon, there's more. You'll be back.
Nice,
But
nice.
I'm sure there's scalable things, but right now the only thing I'm focused on is moving as many people forward as I can so that they can be successful.
Absolutely beautiful.
And
Okay, here, your career has included emotionally demanding roles. This is
mhm,
absolutely very evident. From paramedic work to helping clients with deep mindset blocks, which you've just spent a bunch of time talking about. How do you personally process and recover from the emotional weight of your work? Because this is something that has affected me over my career. And I had a coach said to me, Case, and it was the first time I was like, okay, now it makes sense. He said to me, Case, if you feel the need after a session to lie down, do it. Do it. Don't take
Yeah.
clients back to back.
Um,
Because the
so
emotional investment.
toil, the emotional toil that you take on. Um, I again blessed, cursed with the ability to be clinical as needed,
Okay.
and so
But this is maybe from your your
from the
your parent
paramedic
parent.
journey, yeah, you the things that I have walked in on, I have had to be in on a scene. If I let them stick to me, they will keep me from giving care to the next person. And so that is the primary thing. Now, again, they'll trickle in little by little, and then I go to the ocean. That's really a day at the ocean with my husband and fishing, and it's like I'm a renewed creature. I always
Beautiful.
tell my husband my mermaid tail's getting dry. It's time to go.
How close are you to the ocean?
We are about an hour and a half from the ocean, 2 hours to the actual beach where we can go and sit on the beach.
Very,
So
very
it's
nice.
beautiful.
What has been the most challenging situation you faced as a business owner, and what did it teach you about resilience?
Um, I, I don't know. I would say probably the most challenging thing that I faced was thinking that I just wasn't meant to be a business with
Yeah.
my history and just being ready to give up on myself.
It sounded like that doubt that you had was quite like almost paralyzing, right?
It was. It was. What do I do? How do I fix this? I'm out of ideas. I can't do the thing. Um, and my husband fortunately is my best cheerleader, and he was like, "You can do it. You'll figure it out. Don't worry. If you can't do it, that's fine, but you'll figure it out." And so, yeah, I'd say that was probably one of my biggest challenges as a business owner. Yeah, and then of course the
So,
brain spotting fixed it.
so you've built a life surrounded by family, pets, chickens.
Hmm.
How does your personal life influence your work? And how do you maintain a balance between the two?
I am very jealous of my time working. Like I said, today we're doing on Thanksgiving, but I
Yes.
sat down with my husband and I said, "Look, here's an opportunity. I'd really like to be on this show. Um, here are my options, and here's why I want to do this." But normally, when I'm done, the computers go off and I leave. I don't answer text messages. I don't answer the phone. I just have to let it go
You
because
got set hours.
well, I get to a point where I'm done. So I'm done with all of my
Right.
calls for the day, and anything that's urgent is done. It doesn't matter if it's still important because the important things will never go away. You'll always have more things that are
Ah,
important.
I hope my dear wife hears this. I told her if you get everything done, you're fired.
Yeah, you have you
You have no
have
more
to just
job.
let go, right? And so, yeah, I become very jealous with my time. My husband and I like to do things together. We like to build things. We like to play with the animals. We like to go on, travel. There's so many, we even enjoy going to the grocery store together. So I just guard that time. And when I'm done, I'm done. And then when I pick back up, I'm
Nice.
100% in.
Absolutely beautiful. So you've helped so many people transform their lives. What legacy do you hope to leave through your work, both for your clients and your family?
Um, well, I hope one of my biggest goals is to get my grandkids in private school because I'd like them to have a really good education. I don't know if you know that Texas is not doing well in public school, and neither is Washington State, where my other grandson is, um, and soon to be granddaughter. So I really would like to leave that legacy, a legacy of learning. When I buy the
Right.
kids toys, I want them to learn something. And
Yes, me
then
too.
I want I want these other businesses, these people that have got these dreams that are going to touch hundreds, thousands, millions of people, maybe not even knowing it, to be able to do that. I want them to be able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And when they come back and say, you know what, that hour with Jennie made all the difference. When you ask that question of what was the hardest struggle and what made the difference, I want to be the answer.
Nice. Now, your business is named after you. So normally at this point, I'm asking, and I'm still going to ask it, how did you decide on your business name? What was it that made you decide to go over personal brand? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this, right? They
Right.
go over personal brand, they're like, who am I? Uh, I'm not a celebrity. And then they try to find the Yahoo, Google brand with the logo and stuff. And then they're doing that. And I had a guy I was speaking to earlier today who's in the beginning stages of just thinking about doing his business. And I tell him about your business. And he said to me, okay, so we're going to, and I said to him, hold on, who's we? And I expected him to tell me who else should have been on the call. And he
Right.
said, oh, no, 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 I'm talking about the team I'm going to have. And I'm like, dude, it's just you. So just say you. Like, you don't need to be a we. So for you, what was it that made you decide you're going to go with your name, a personal brand, as opposed to building a name that was, well, any other name?
Um, I wish I had a really great answer for that. I looked up jenniferhays.com. It wasn't available. And so I went back to jenniehays.com and it was like, okay, what do I want to call this? And I was like, well, it's not just insulin resistance at that time. I was like, well, it's more of a health. And it was like, and I landed on health solutions. I was like, okay, that's what it is. I'm doing a second kind of a DBA under it with Beyond Mindset with Jennie Hays. And again, using my name because, like you said, I mean, I guess I'm the only one
For
really
sure.
good. So why not take advantage of that?
I don't even think it's that. I think for me personally, I mean, the business as a legal entity is under my name. It's Case Dean Limited. I
Hmm.
trade under Traxel Nurture because it's a specific thing that I do. But when it comes to legacy, when it comes to personal brand, I don't even think it's that deep for me. I actually think it's just more to do with the fact of it's just come from me.
Yeah, it's mine. You know, this
It's
is who I
mine.
am. Right.
Exactly that. It's who I am. And when I've worked with some people in their business, this is exactly what you've said, but the malaise that they're having in their business is linked to the fact that they're not feeling good as who they are.
Right.
And so the business in which is kind of an outer extension of them can't be good no matter what happens, no matter what they
Yeah.
learn. To your point, right?
Right. And I was there. I was there. So um, by the end of the journey in my insulin resistance coaching, I was starting to self sabotage my own health. And it was, you know, how can I go out there and teach this when I can't do it? How can I, you know, say this and do this? And now that I've made the switch, my health is back on track and things are good. And I just don't, I now can talk about insulin resistance too. It doesn't bother me. But yeah, you get stuck in that mindset of who am I?
Yeah.
And it's just all mental trash. It really
Yeah.
is. It's mind trash.
What would you say if I ask you, how are you measuring business growth outside of revenue?
Um, I would say that I'm measuring it by the number of people who are starting to recognize what brain spotting is because it's so new. When I'm having somebody say, "Oh yeah, I heard you on X, Y, or Z, and I'm interested in brain spotting." Because
Right.
again, that is a big piece of the reason I'm doing the podcast and going on shows like yours that are wonderful is to teach people that there's the option. Do I
Right.
want them to come to me? Sure.
For
Do I
sure.
want them to get help? That is the most important piece.
And this bit I've heard throughout the whole time I've been speaking to you, and it's what I always tell people. wanting to make money isn't enough for me. Having a purpose bigger than you is. You have a purpose that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
Why? Why is because when you first started speaking about brain spotting, at the top of this conversation, the word that came to my mind was a movement. Not in any kind of fad, not in any kind of gimmicky way, but actual real kind of across the globe kind of wave movement. You just said something which was, this isn't just, I know people need it and there's loads of people that need it and so I can make a lot of bank from it. This is something to do with something in your marrow that's telling you you need to let as many people know as possible. What is that? What is why? What is it that's pushing you actually to do that? As
I
opposed to just make money and just
yeah,
go to the beach.
that would be nice too. But there's something about I don't like to be in the dark. We talked about my love of learning. I don't like to not know what's going on. I don't like to miss out on things because I didn't know about it. And I can't fix all of that for everybody else, but this one thing, this one piece can make such a difference that nobody should miss out on it. And so I am from saying, like I do, gee, I wish this had been available or I had known about it at X time.
Could
And
you
so,
say that it's linked to you? There's grateful is one. I suppose it's gone past being a surprise, but I feel like the other part of it is that it's another way for you to articulate how much of an impact it's had on your life.
yeah,
As in, it's not just a thing. It's like a
mm-mm.
profound
Yeah,
impact.
it's a
And to
huge
the
thing.
point of the wrong advice you got, which is don't tell people that because in actual fact, if you did have something that changed, I know pharmaceuticals, it's the only way I can explain it right now.
I
But if
know.
you did have something where you're like, just take this with water and
Hmm.
you'll be good in the morning, there's only a kind of person who's definitely not one of my friends who would keep that to themselves,
Right,
right?
right.
It seems to be similar.
Yeah, and definitely because it is to me. It's like this is the pill. It's not painful to take. It's not going to cause horrible side effects. It's going to make you feel so good. Just take it because it's going to fix these things that is otherwise you're going to slodge through trying to get past it. Yeah, it's made, and it's sharing not just my success, but sharing the success of all of these people that I'm seeing over and over and over and over again, where there's just lifted off their shoulders, a weight that doesn't need to be there, a weight that we put on ourselves because we don't know better. And if we can open up the window, take that weight off, and say, okay, now breathe, just breathe.
We do need to become. It's a shame. I think collectively we need to do better. But I was having a conversation with, I think it was my son recently, and explained to him that the way the world is going, unfortunately, you're gonna have to get better. You
Mhm.
can't wait for it to get better. You're gonna have to get better. And talking
Right.
to you, one thing is clear, and it's not as if to say you're the only person I've met, but this is the most, I don't know, this is the most highlighted version I've had of it. You seem to be working in such a way where you help people with the first domino. This is something very important in my work. I'm always told to them, we need to find the first domino. Because if we can find the first domino and we've set everything else up,
Right.
everything else is going to work out fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you say that. What I tell people is that, I'm not going to tell you that after a brain spotting session, you're going to go earn that $20,000 a month. But after that brain spotting session, you'll be able to do that networking. You'll be able to make that phone call, which will set you up to do those. So I like the idea of the dominoes because really it is. It's those things that just keep us from moving forward and pushing that domino.
Um, if this is okay without anybody's, um, no, it's just come to mind is okay, no, I think you've already touched on it.
Okay.
But if you're a fly on the wall, overhearing a client talking about you, what is the one thing you would love to hear them say about you?
She got me. She helped me. She helped me do what I needed to do, and she got me. That's probably the highest praise that I get from my clients.
Are most of your clients women?
I would say probably about 90%. Men, well, does it work with men? Yes. I mean, we explored, you have a good
For sure.
connection to your emotions. A lot of men can be a little more stoic and a little more hold offish. Doesn't mean it won't work, but they're less likely to step into something like this. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
we're built a certain
built
way. I
different.
remember in
Yeah.
my business with what I do in consulting coaching, I looked back and I said to my wife, because it shocked me, I was like, I think I'm pretty sure 80% of my clients are women. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like it was a problem, it was just a realization.
It's a
And then I
realization.
went on this kind of hunt for men. And what I found very interesting is what is almost a bit of a cliche with men, which is, dude, your arm's hanging off at a tendon. Shouldn't you
Mhm.
go to the mercy? Nah, I'll be fine. I'll
Nah,
just patch it up. It's like, dude,
duct tape. Yep.
it's on the floor.
And something else about men that I've noticed is that a lot of times they don't get as stuck as women because
Interesting.
culturally, culturally they are expected to do the thing, whereas women are
Make it
not.
work.
Women are
But
supposed to have
that
ultimate
also
authority.
means from the men I've seen that I remember saying when I was first starting this, the person I was working with was the CEO. And the reason why I was working with the CEO is because the CEO was the one person who couldn't ask anybody else for help because they're supposed to
Yeah.
know how to do everything.
Mhm.
So in actual fact, if they ask anybody for help, it's like they're failing. And that's just incorrect. But what I found with men was I had so many conversations over the years. It's not like I don't work with men or don't want to work with men, but it's a very interesting dynamic because so many of them will be like, yeah, I already know that. Yeah, I
And
know
then
that. It's like, so why are we talking then? If you already know
and
everything. And there's that vulnerability that is very difficult to actually be coachable and to
mhm.
actually allow the deep dive into what is the first domino we need to unblock, the hierarchy needs, whatever you will. It's how I work. I can't work on a surface level.
Right. And the truth is that men, especially at those higher levels, have a lot of imposter syndrome. A lot of that, okay, if they find out who I really am, they're going to pull me out of here. I'm going to get fired. They, because they have excelled so well that they feel like they've almost gone beyond who they are. They haven't. But then trying to get them to admit that to anybody is like pulling teeth. But when they do, they get amazing results because
For
it's
sure.
like, oh, here's the realization. Gotcha. Okay. Ready to go for that next big jump because I am worth it and I can do it.
And what would be your advice to a man in that kind of situation who I remember working with a sales leadership coach. So she's working with people who are making a lot of money, fast moving, and they come to her saying, my team isn't performing. And these are a lot of them are men. And this
Right.
sales coach was a woman. And she's a no holds barred, says it how it is, and I love her for that. But I remember her explaining that a lot of the time she's working with people who are saying sales are low, we're having problems, the team's this, the team's that, and she tells them, stop. Have you ever thought the problem might be you?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And they're
It trickles
shocked.
down. Yeah. It trickles down. And yeah, my advice to them would be to stop and look to see if they are perpetuating the issue. Just like we talked about corporate America earlier. Are you the one that's lost touch with what your people and your clients need. Here's the thing, when you ask anybody, who's the most important person to your business, they say, well, my client. Except when you have a team, it's not the client, it's your team, because your team's most important people should be the client. And they forget that. They forget that their client is their team. And if it's not working, they are doing something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. And there's power. I was taught this a long time ago in sales about the power of responsibility. And he said this thing to me. I was like, that's so clever, but I totally get it. He said to me, the thing about responsibility within it is you have the ability to respond. It's not about whose fault it is. It's
Right.
about you have a power to do something about what happens next. Same thing I told my children. They're a bit older now, but when I was younger, like when they were younger, what's this on the floor? There's a piece of paper. Why haven't you picked it up? I didn't put it there. It's like, dude, this is your house. You don't have to put it there.
Sounds familiar.
You don't have to put it there, but you can make the house a better place. You don't want it to be there, just pick it up. It's not about, and I think
Yeah.
that whole kind of thinking beyond yourself and actually thinking about who you need to look after, what you just said now about how it goes down the line, that your most important people are your team and their most important people the client. That is an amazing way to look at things, and it's the truth behind things. And I really do help. A lot has happened. Did you know it was International Men's Day recently?
No, I did not.
I didn't. Facebook, you just pop onto it, someone puts a post, you're like, oh, really? And you're just
Yeah.
like, Facebook is kind of actually important in a way. But yeah, it was International Men's Day. And the big thing that has happened over the last year, especially since the pandemic, is a focus on men's mental health.
Yeah.
My wife has leaned a lot into this. We've had a lot of conversations where it's become a lot okay to tell her, like, properly let the guts out. This is shit. This is how I'm feeling at the moment. Because normally she can. And she told me years back, she said to me, because it was like, why aren't you listening? It was more like, she said to me, you're so strong. I actually don't know how to lift you. Right? And I was
Yeah.
explaining to her, you actually don't need to lift me. But the same way that I know everything that's happening inside your company, and I know all of the characters without ever stepping a foot in because I'm interested in you, it's just that back. And she
Yeah.
started to realize that she didn't need to solve anything for me. But within that union, she was one of the most important people to me that I could trust with the truth of what is happening. In the same way
Okay.
with me, she's got to put a mask on outside, that I shouldn't have to put the mask on inside. And I'm so grateful that she stepped up into realizing that, because it's made such a difference to relationship. But again, in my own, I've got 3 boys. And even my own sons, I can see it developing bit by bit, where unless you really kind of grab them by the shoulders and say, dude, how are you? What's going on? Tell me. They'll just be telling you, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Which is
Everything's
sad.
fine. Yeah, it's sad. Some of it though is the age, and I will tell you that my youngest stepdaughter, she came back. She's 24 now, and I'd say earlier this year she came to me and said, everything you told me, I should have listened to you. You were right.
That's what my son
So
said. He's
I was like,
29. He said
oh,
the same
really?
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said this. I was talking about work and office politics, and you need to learn your craft to be able to sell yourself something. He literally said to me, we were doing a barbecue, and he said to me, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Bear me just one moment. I'm going to cut this out. Bear me just one moment.
Yep.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Jenny. This is
Yeah.
the reason why I will never ever do this live. But even if I did, I wouldn't care, because this is real life. It's so cold here. And so I open a door. The grass is basically frosty. And within that disgusting moment, I closed it and locked it. And I locked my son out. He's just come back from
Oh no.
school. So I just see he's ringing. I'm like, what's he ringing me for? Oh shit, he's outside. So yeah.
Who
So
cares?
you're saying about age,
Mhm.
that it's dependent on the age, and that your stepdaughter came back to you.
I think it's dependent on age, maturity. The brain doesn't really mature until you're in your 20s, and then in her case, she made some really tough choices. I won't say they're bad choices, but they were tough choices that I wouldn't have made, and we tried to steer her away from. Um, and she's kind of coming to full fruition and realizing, oh, you were right. And I can remember doing the same thing. I'm going against what my parents were suggesting and saying, and then in my 20s going, oh, gee, I should have listened to you. But so
It's
I think
interesting
some
you
of
talk
that's
about that.
maturity.
When you said getting married at 16 or 18,
18, but yeah,
that seemed to be on one side striking out on your own, but also it seemed a bit rebellious as well.
yeah, it
Like
was.
the most, because it happens like that when we talk about cutting the
Mhm.
apron strings. It happened for me when I was, my first son I had when I was 19. That wasn't to get away from the home, but I do remember that I had a kind of bust up with my mum because it was a way to cut it. And I talked to my sons about it. And then you kind of come back, and the parent's job at that moment is to respect the fact that the child has grown,
Right.
right? And respect whatever it is, that the child is not the same child that left, and just deal with them. Because I always said with my children, 29, 21, and 17, I always say, and I've said it to my wife about this, that one, the fact that you've got three kids doesn't mean you're an expert, because we could have a
No.
fourth one and I'm telling you I don't know anything because literally they're individual people, right? But
Mhm.
then another interesting thing about that is as they're growing up, you need to reintroduce yourself to them.
Right. Yeah, because you become different. You almost change characters in their lives. So my husband has trouble seeing the history. My When I was growing up, my mother was very nurturing and my father was very distant. But then the family that my husband met was a mother who was very distant and a father who was very nurturing. And he has a lot of trouble understanding my stories of childhood and how I grew up. But they became different characters as I aged, and I became different characters
For sure.
as I
For sure.
grew. I'm not who I was at
No.
16. Thank
And it's
goodness. I
part of
wouldn't do
your
that if
work with the brain spotting, also letting people know that they may be a person now, but through habits and that emotional attachment, they're actually tying themselves to a person that was from the past.
and that's very likely a piece of it. So the wonderful thing, like I said, every single situation's different.
Yeah.
Um, so have I seen that? Most definitely. It's work with some people that it's like, okay, let's bring in your and let's talk to the younger self and give that younger self what they need, whether it be safety or love or space or whatever it is. So there's definitely depending on the person. um, there's just so much. Like I said, it's a never ending variety, which I've never had the two sessions that were identical, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's actually something that I can say it feels like you were born to do it. Like it's vocational for you, as just opposed to
Yeah,
just being good at something.
yeah, it's not just a job. And I look back over my life and it's like, oh well, this happened for this reason, is how this brought me here. And it really is kind of a culmination of, you know 50 years of growing.
No, but it's a beautiful when you get to that point because at some points in your life, it's so, especially for mine, it's just so. I mean to tell people, am I cursed? Like, I'm doing everything right. Like, what is going on? Nothing's working out. I'm just like, must be one of the most unluckiest people on earth. And then something happens in your life and you look back and you're like, oh, and everything seems to align. It all makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the marriage that I was in, that my early marriage, there was a lot wrong with it, but there was a lot of that built me differently. My husband's always saying, I wish I'd found you earlier, because we have missed each other.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so many times, because we were in the same area growing up.
Okay.
But I keep reminding him that I wasn't the person I was when we
Beautiful.
met, younger, and neither were you.
Beautiful.
And we've grown to this point where we came together on purpose. God had a plan
Yeah.
for us, and it might not have worked.
Absolutely. Okay, look, I've got in my back of my mind the 8 course meal that you're going to tuck into at least a quarter
Yeah,
of.
I missed that part. I was telling him earlier that my husband and I are alone for Thanksgiving this year, and it started out as turkey and mashed potatoes and corn, and now it's like an 8 course meal with pie. We've had 2 breakfasts, and I mean, it's just a full day of. That's all he wants to do is eat. So yeah,
Okay, so I've got 2 more questions for you.
okay.
First off, we're going to do the bonus question, which
Oh,
means you're
drum
going to
roll.
choose a number between 1 and 18.
Oh, that's easy. 16.
Oh, okay. If you could go back in time, what business advice would you give to your younger self?
Just do the damn thing. Pardon my French. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I've been trying to start business since I was in high school.
yeah.
I did the Amway and Mary Kay, and I kept getting stuck at marketing.
Mary
Just
Kay.
do it. Just do it,
Yeah,
even though
yeah,
it
yeah,
sucks.
yeah. I like that whole idea of, just start and,
Yeah,
just do it was a big thing for Nike because it really is just get up, just keep going, learn as you go, do something. If you can't really even analyze what went wrong if you've not got any kind of data to look at to say what did
right.
I do, how did it go, and even then don't overanalyze, just keep moving. There has to be an
Yeah.
outlet for whatever's inside you, right?
Yeah, you can't wait for it to be perfect. You can't
Yeah,
wait to have a situation where you're not afraid of being seen. You can't wait until you're perfect. You're never going to be. You don't want to be. If you're
no,
perfect, nobody wants to work with you,
no. And why is that? If you're perfect, nobody wants to work with you because
because they'll never
you,
aspire to be who you
there you
are.
go, there
Yeah,
you
they
go.
you know they say the third grader worships the fifth grader,
Right.
but the third grader could care less about the adult.
It was one of the things that I was taught in business was that when we first start out, we've got a lot of idols. That might be not that might be a name, or it might just be a general feeling that everybody ahead in front of us is ahead of us.
Hmm.
And I remember the exercise went on a scale of 1 to 7, or something like 1 to 10. Where would you place yourself as far as your skill is concerned? Majority of the time within the group, for me, it was like if it's 1 to 7, I place myself like a 5.5, even 6. He said, okay, stop selling to the 6 and 7, turn around,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, right.
Because there's a whole bunch of people who would hear you, listen to what you're going through, and wish to be in the exact same position you are, working with clients, doing the damn thing, right?
Right.
But they can't because they're literally a couple of steps behind you.
I haven't pushed that domino yet.
And
Yeah.
that I think is really what I've heard from you is the inspiration that you provide to people. And this is very important. I think if I take it from a marketing point of view, or if I just take it from a decent human point of view, is inspiring people whether you work with them or not.
You're right. Yeah, I I do have a gift for sales. I mean, I can close 90% of sales, warm sales. Here's my thing though. If I close a sale with you and I'm not going to be able to deliver and I just do it for the money, now I have a dissatisfied customer. I have
For
somebody who
sure.
didn't need this. I'm actually third generation of people who have been fired from a sales job because they wouldn't just sell the thing if someone didn't
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell you on something because I love it. I want you to love it as much as I do.
Jenny, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, really. I look at all of these conversations and I'm looking for other jewels for the crown, and you're definitely a jewel in the crown when it comes down to the kind of people I want to speak to. And what I told you at the beginning was the whole purpose of
Right.
this
Yeah.
podcast. Right. There are going to be people who are going to want to hear more about you.
Hmm.
They may be interested in working with you. What should they do? Where should they go?
Well, you said they should just Google me, but incognito. They can send me a personal email, Jennie, Jennie, at Jennie Hays, HAYS.com. You can check out my website, jenniehays.com. I'm on Facebook. I think it's Jennie's Health Solution, no S. I wasn't, yeah, there was a whole, don't even ask about Facebook there. Um, but what I encourage you to do is contact me. Let's talk. Like I said, I'm not going to sell you anything. I want to know how I can help you get to that next level, whether we do need to push that domino down with brain spotting, or maybe you just need some advice on networking. You
Right.
know, maybe you just need to know that, podcasts aren't your thing, but
Right.
you love this other thing. Let's
Yeah.
explore and let's have fun. I mean, let's play. That's kind of the way I look at business, is that yes, there's a serious side to business, but you've got to be able to play and enjoy it, or
That's
why
where
are
the
you
power
getting
is.
up to do it?
For sure. For sure. That's where the magic is. Most
Yeah.
definitely. Thanks again, Jennie. Happy Thanksgiving to you. I
Thank
really
you.
do hope to speak to you again in the future.
Yeah.
They're doing some amazing work. For what it's worth, thank you for deciding to actually do this as a vocation and be so dedicated to it. I've learned a lot just from speaking to you today, and I'll be checking out your website and having a look. And you're right, I'm somebody who's going to research and get into that. And I love the whole idea of personal development, know more about yourself
Yeah.
and just know more about how you can improve yourself. And then once you do that, throw down the ladder and help somebody else as well. Okay, thanks again, Jennie.
Thank you. This has been a delight. You're a conversationalist. I love this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Startup Lowdown. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Startup Lowdown. I hope today's conversation brought you fresh insights and a new perspective on the realities of building a business. Remember, success isn't just about profit, it's about growth, both personal and professional. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider subscribing, leaving a review, a comment, and make sure you share it with everybody who might benefit from these candid stories.